Hi guys, and welcome back to my second episode with Jousef Murad. In this episode, we spoke about Jousef's journey into becoming an engineer and also his journey into becoming a founder, or as he calls it, a solopreneur. So if you guys don't know, he Jousef has founded the Science Academy, where he creates short courses for up-and-coming engineers. We also speak about his roles at Monolith, his day-to-day job, where he's a product marketing engineer. Hello, Yusuf. It's the first time we're speaking, definitely. No, we
Yeah,
spoke beforehand. It's nice to meet you, Yusuf. How you doing?
good. I'm doing fine. Thank you so much for inviting me to your show. I'm the second guest, right? So it's an honor.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's quite a big jump in terms of interviewing a podcaster, so you could definitely see
Feels good to
something
be on the
different.
other side.
Absolutely. I'd like to start with a question, actually, with to understand a bit more about who you are, Yusuf. So I guess my question would be to understand where you are today. Um, what would I need to know about you from your background in terms of how you approach, for example, family, friends, how you were raised, where you grew up, that sort of thing? If that's an easy question to start
Oh, that's a long story. Yeah, I can give a quick intro, and then you can just ask also personal stuff. I don't mind. So I'm Youssef. I'm a mechanical engineer, actually trained mechanical engineer. Did my bachelor's and master's in Germany at KIT, so Karlsruhe Institute of Technology. And my bachelor's, I focused on finite element analysis and structural design. And then in my master's, I switched to computational fluid dynamics and then turbulence modeling, and then finished off my studies with a thesis on AI,
with.
more on the engineering side of things. And yeah, currently I'm working for a company called Monolith, which is based in London. We do AI for engineers. Before that, I used to work for a company called SimScale, really cool people, really cool founders as well. And they do simulation in the cloud. And yeah, before that, I was studying, as I said, and then had a ton of jobs. So I think it must be between 10 to 15 different jobs I did. So I was working, for example, as an academic for university. So I was doing some simulations, some testing, but also I was working at an assembly line at Mercedes-Benz.
Mm,
So that was also an experience. I mainly did it because of the money, because they paid quite well. But yeah, I think it was a good learning to actually see what I don't want to do in the future and what I want to do in the future. And then
mm,
apart from that, I was raised quite normally. Didn't have any rich parents or too many friends, to be honest, because I consider myself an introvert
mm,
for whatever that's worth. Sometimes I'm extroverted. For example, if I like people, for example, like you, I love to talk. But generally, I'm very introverted, which is kind of counterintuitive because I'm introverted, but I do YouTube videos and fun videos sometimes. So yeah.
mm,
And then apart from that, I have a YouTube channel, have a bit of courses. I'm a Coursera instructor.
mm.
Yeah, so many things. So if you want to delve into something a little bit more specifically, I'm more than happy to do so.
Absolutely. I think that's a great introduction. Yeah, there's many. Actually, I wanted to ask about so the Mercedes-Benz assembly line, for example, it might be, but there was an internship that you did during university, or
You
how did
mean
you
the
use it?
assembly line at the assembly
Yeah,
line?
yeah. Did you because it's quite a if to get into I suppose Mercedes-Benz in general, I think it's probably there's
Yeah,
probably
it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't an internship, but it's as you said, it's quite hard to get in. But it was more like I finished high school 2011, and
nice.
then I had actually nothing to do, so I went on holidays first for 8 weeks or something like that, and then after that, I actually, or while I was on holiday, or before that actually, I was applying for Mercedes-Benz to work at an assembly line, because that's actually what students here do, because you collect a lot of money to actually finance your studies and do some other
Mm,
fun stuff. So I was applying there, and then after my holidays, I went to Mercedes-Benz and worked at the assembly line. And that goes from cleaning parts, basically from the trucks. And I think it's the biggest truck manufacturer in Europe.
mm,
It's in a city called Wörth, which was like 20 kilometers from my home.
right.
Yeah, was cleaning parts, yeah, finishing some stuff, and
Mm,
it was quite boring to be honest. But as I said, I did it mainly for the yeah paycheck.
I see what you mean. No, I'm only asking as well because I related that in that aspect because when I was finishing high school, I managed to go in this 6 month internship at a company and this doing this assembly thing as well. Um, it was yeah, interesting experience. Definitely to learn from that. It might not be something that I'm looking at. It was very you could think about a lot of things and it was very monotone in that way. You're putting maybe or maybe I'm not sure. It was I was based in a electronics industry.
Hmm.
manufacturing, so it was slightly maybe different. But yeah, fascinating, interesting. Thank you for running me through that. So I would like to actually ask about sort of your. I understand you're doing a couple of things beside, and I assume your main job right now is the engineering role at Monolith, I believe. Is that your
Correct.
day job, you would say? Okay. Would you be able to sort of run me down what your sort of day to day looks like?
Uh, I'm very fortunate to work at a startup because I personally prefer startups because you are quite free in what you do. Of course, there are always like boundaries and restrictions on what you can do and what you cannot do. But I feel like compared to a big corporation, you have way more wiggle room, I would call it, to actually be more creative, do what you want to do. Of course, within the bounds, as I just mentioned. How my day looks like, I usually wake up at around 8 a.m. in the morning, get breakfast, drink coffee. Of course, engineers love coffee. And then I'm kind of checking emails. Sometimes I don't check emails because it just gets you too overwhelmed. And actually, the day before, let's say, for example, on Sunday, I would plan for Monday. So I actually know exactly what I want to do on Monday so I can just get started. Because I feel a lot of people, they go into work on Monday and they don't actually know what to do. So they just have to sort all the things. It's probably wasting like 4 or 5 hours. Okay. Then I'm starting to work. Could be on a blog post, could be on other marketing activities. Catching up with colleagues, having a marketing sync just to see what everyone is up to. And then I'm finishing work actually at 5, 6-ish, sometimes even later, depending on the workload. And then it's time to go to not the 9 to 5, but the 5 to 9. So basically, working on my videos, thinking about courses, maybe working on script for videos. And I'm trying to get more into it now because I mainly do podcasting now. Because I feel if you're an engineer, you want to do technical videos, it takes a lot of work to actually make sure it's technically accurate. Because, there's this thing called Cunningham's Law, because if you put out wrong information on the internet, all the people will come and tell you what you did wrong. So 99% could be right, but 1% could be wrong, and then people will just pick on that 1%. So that's super. It takes a lot of effort to actually do engineering content.
I actually wanted to ask about that. So interesting. I've been thinking of doing some sort of video in terms of what I've been studying about, but I've been feeling this awful wave of like, how can I actually speak about this sort of technical things if I'm currently, it's. I think what I'm thinking of is doing sort of a documenting my own journey sort of way, rather than talking about it sort of like, oh, I know what I'm talking about, like because the reality is that as I'm not an expert in it at all, and even though I'm interested in it, I would love to talk about it. It's that thing of but I think I definitely need to do some rigorous planning for that and some scripting because as you say,
Yeah, sometimes scripts can definitely help. And also, I like the approach that you take because I was also in the same mindset. I'm not an expert. Why would anyone listen to me? It's garbage anyway. But I think that's very counterproductive. And I posted something recently on LinkedIn where I said it's actually good to be one step ahead of people you're teaching. And there was a lot of backlash from all the experts or self-proclaimed experts saying, no, you need to be an expert. Otherwise, you can't teach. I'm like, that doesn't make sense because if you're only one step ahead, for example, if you teach something, an engineering subject, you have still the beginner's mindset, which is exactly what you're struggling with or struggled with a couple of months ago maybe. And that way you can help beginners actually by being in that beginner mindset. If you're an expert, you might be miles ahead of people who you want to teach. So that's also why a lot of students, me for example, I started a YouTube channel because, well, I want to tackle things from the first principles. Like what is this thing called Navier-Stokes equation? What is this F equals ma? And professors don't tackle it that way. They just say, here's the equation. Solve it, and have fun. So I think being just one step ahead is really an advantage, actually.
That's a really good way to think about it, as you say, because you forget and you can't really empathize with someone that was in your experience in that way or in your place.
Correct.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a really good way to think about it. I guess I would like to also ask about. So I guess you covered Monolith in the day to day as well, but you covered that both of the things. You do both of them at the same in a day, basically. So I was going to ask about actually on the YouTube side of things and the course side of things. I guess my question would be, what are you motivated by? Why? Why is this? Why do you do what you do, really? Might be broad.
That's a really good question. Sometimes it switches between what the motivation is. First of all, there's even a book I think called "Motivation is Shit" or something like that. something like that. There's a book actually, because if you rely only on motivation and you only do things when you're motivated, that means you're not really productive. So actually you have to rely on discipline. So if you're disciplined enough, for example, you start YouTube, you have hundreds of subscribers. Was the case when I started YouTube. Started to upload my first podcast, horrible quality. I'm not saying I'm at good or perfection right now, but that was just garbage. And then I remember just refreshing the app every 5 seconds. You see 99 subscribers, 100 subscribers, and 101 was going very, very slow. So I think one motivator is definitely metrics. I can't deny that, because we are all driven by metrics somehow. If it's money, if it's subscribers, if it's clicks, likes, and if people say, no, it's not a driver, that's just, I think that's a bit of bullshitting. And then secondly, I like to call it egoistic altruism. That means, yes, I want to earn money. I want to do great courses, generate revenue from it, passive income. And we can talk about passive income at a later point in time if that's actually a myth. But also I want to give back to the community, because I feel, they should actually profit from it. I give knowledge away for free on my YouTube channel. This is basically the altruistic part. And then the egoistic part is, by the way, I have courses here. If you want to buy them. And if not, I have everything for free on my channel. So feel free to do what you think is right. And then another part is, I think, not growing up with a lot of money. I think that's also a big motivator, because my parents weren't rich. So a big driver is definitely generating passive income streams,
So, but we also have to
hopefully eventually becoming a millionaire.
Ourselves in a way.
It's also definitely
how we're gonna
so if anyone was saying no, money is not important, the problem is that every problem that you have in life, or most of the problems that you have in life, are related to money. So if people say I don't care about money, that's just
however, to admit to myself
weird
that
indoctrination
I don't exactly know what I'm doing. I feel what I feel is what my heart is sort of leading me to, what my gut is telling me as well. Because I tend to find that my rationality actually sometimes can, if it's not in sync with my heart and my gut, it could be out of sync, and it's like, that's what you should go, because this is what generates you, and this is what my heart's telling me. yeah, yeah, mm, 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 yeah. Mm. As you say, because yes, of course, there is one aspect where I'm interested in the generally the to life, seeing it from theory to in real life, and actually being actually practical, and solving some sort of problem, and seeing that feedback loop from someone is pleased from that outcome of what I've created. That is really, really interesting and really fulfilling to me. However, that's the I would if I don't know, maybe of the actual journey does actually energize me.
Really good point.
Maybe
I would agree.
It seems valuable.
But it's a bit of a struggle, because I feel like when you say publicly that you want to do courses, or you want to earn a living from selling courses or something, it sometimes gets a lot of backlash, because I don't know, it's kind of not allowed to talk in society about making money, because at the end of the day, of course we want to make money, we want to be happy, we want to play a status game, because at the end of the day it's all status, right? Why are you an engineer? Well, it's status. You can say to people, hey, by the way, I'm an engineer, I'm valuable for society, and if you earn more money,
so you're paying attention.
A higher status.
It's not even
if people say, no, I don't want to earn more money, I don't want to have a higher status.
What am I trying to get at here?
Something is not right.
When I'm seeing lecturers, paying attention to how they respond to what they say. So it's not even just conveying information, but you're also listening, and then also noticing what they need, which is really interesting in that way as well. So I'm sure sort of ask for feedback constantly upon that thing that that you're trying to fill, that contributing to solving. Correct me if I'm wrong. Mm, yeah. Mm, mm. Find out about the pain point first, of course, right? You before investing. Yes. Mm, mm, mm. Might be to produce value as well as an input. Is that slightly different? Or Mm. Yeah. Mm. Mm. Mm.
That makes a lot of sense. I love that you mentioned this because that
Yeah.
it's actually such a struggle.
I'm
Like,
making
let's
this
say we
pizza
are
at
just an
9
engineer,
p.m.
right? We
There's no one
graduate,
gonna,
we
no
have
one's
all
gonna
these
come in.
skills, but what people don't think about, if you create a YouTube channel, you have to be a good speaker, a good
Mm.
communicator, you have to convey the idea or the message, you have to be a good salesperson, because at the end of the day, everything is sales. If you
Mm.
go to an internship and you want to have that internship, at the end of the day, that's sales, because
Mm.
you're selling
Well, my
yourself
question actually
to the
goes on
company.
to, you mentioned,
But also selling courses is
there
so
are
hard.
creative
People
that
don't
are
actually know how hard
that
that actually
I
is,
could
because
SQL knowledge. I
you
mean, I
first
sourced
have
that
to
myself. I'm not sure
convince the person
necessarily.
or prospect to actually buy the course, and you have to tell them, hey, this is your pain, and this is how I can solve your pain.
Mm.
Because a lot of people think a course is
Mm.
just like a supplement,
Mm.
like a vitamin.
Interesting.
I'm just having it, it's a nice to have. But actually,
So
if you
you're
solve a pain,
so
specific pain
the
of a
approach is
person, that's actually way more valuable than actually a supplement that you give them. And there's all the kind of things that go into it. It's like psychology, sales. Um, it's really, really hard though. I can definitely tell you, I have a ton of followers, but actually making them buy something, that's actually the tricky part. Mhm. Definitely, but it's a big struggle. Like even creating courses, recording them, having a plan how to create courses, it's really really a big struggle. But I mean, if you create courses, asking for feedback is definitely the way to go. Then you can just implement it. But if you're building a product, if it's software as a service or something like that, listening to every single feedback might get you distracted from the main purpose of the main goal that you're trying to achieve. So I think in the case of both of us, like if you want to create courses or videos, I think listening to the audience makes a ton of sense. So if I'm creating a video on free body diagrams and people want to see a 2 degree of freedom oscillator, and then you actually create that because you have heard it like multiple times, hey, I want to see that video, and then you just create it. Sometimes that's a very good question. Sometimes I create a course depending on the feedback that I'm receiving. Um, but sometimes I also create courses. For example, I'm now working on a course called Python Bootcamp, which basically takes you from zero to hero, like object-oriented programming, what are variables, all these kind of things. Because I think it might be valuable for a lot of people. But then the problem is, that brings us back to sales. You have to compete. A lot of people compete on pricing. For example, if you have a platform such as Udemy, which I uploaded one course to, I'll probably never do it again, because you get like, if they promote it for you, you get a 97% cut or something, or 70% cut. It's insane. So basically, you're not taking anything away from that. So if you compete on pricing, it's gonna get very difficult, because one has a $9 course and you're selling yours for 50. Of course, naturally, everyone would go to the $9 course, saying, okay, for $10, I can have a nice Python course. So what you have to actually convince the people about is the value. So what value are you actually bringing to the people? Is it just a simple Python course? Is there an additional benefit to your course? So that's also so super complicated, like value-based pricing versus just the price itself. low base pricing. It just gets too competitive. Like Udemy, $10 here, $12 here, $15 here, and then you're pricing up to $50. Like it's a bit difficult. I don't even think that specifically about competitor landscape, because if people trust you, if you build a trust, then people would buy a course from you. But if not, it takes a ton of work or a lot of years to actually build trust, and just the moment to actually ruin that trust. So you really have to be super careful in the YouTube space, or like influencer space, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, Udemy, I don't know. It's a bit weird if they take a 70%, 80% cut of your income, then the profit is like what, $2-3 for a course. What do you want to buy from that? That's also a very good question. Coursera is also an interesting one. They pay you a lump sum for a course that you create. So I can't mention, because of contractual agreements, I can't mention the price now, but they pay you a lump sum for a course that you create, and they made way more money than I would have made if I sell the course myself. Problem being though is I used Coursera as a leverage. That means I built my trust via Coursera. They pay me, I do the course. They earned way more from me than I could have earned if I sold it myself. But on the other hand, that brings us to the point of leverage. The problem is if they pay you a lump sum, that means you don't actually make money while you sleep. And the goal is actually to not trade your time against money. That means, let's say I'm a freelancer and I have to drive to the place to actually consult people. But if I'm driving to the space, I'm investing time, money, gas, whatever it might be. This actually means the input to output relationship is almost equivalent. So what I'm trying to achieve, or what the goal should be for everyone, not only engineers, is actually I'm putting in minimal input, I get maximum leverage and have a lot of output. That could be, for example, a YouTube video that goes viral. You create a YouTube video, you go to bed, and it generates clicks and revenue, and over time, this kind of compounding effect kicks in. So at some point, if you do YouTube for 3-4 years, you will see you have generated like 2,000, 3,000 euros, basically passively. Basically, they don't pay for the amount of people that sign up for the course, but basically they say, you do this course, we give you X amount of euros. So not if 10,000 people sign up, you get $9 for everyone. It doesn't work like that, which is, by the way, smart from their business perspective, but not for me, because I'm the one I'm putting in work once, and they give me a lump sum, but they have the leverage. Basically, the more people sign up, the more money they get, but I only get one payment. That's a tricky thing. Yeah. Mm. There's definitely machine learning algorithms or like data analytics that goes into it. Like, for example, you could predict the likelihood of someone churning, like a customer, if they would churn, like not become like basically not a customer anymore. There's a lot of machine learning algorithms out there, and I'm 100% sure Coursera does the same thing. They have a data analytics team, and they see what's in demand, and that way they structure their learning programs and learning paths, and then basically make sure to generate the most revenue from that, what they found out. Quite sure. Challenges, my current role could be as always different, but I would probably say the main challenges is to make sure you create content on a consistent basis, which is high quality. So you have to kind of have this engine going of content production, discussing with different team members if that aligns with their goals as well. So everything is like working like a clockwork, so to speak. So it's in a startup that can be very difficult, but every individual has to make sure they are contributors, but also working as a team together, which isn't too difficult actually at Monolith, because if the culture is very strong, that's actually not a big problem. But if the culture is weak, as I've seen it in other startups, then it's becoming a little bit difficult. Mhm. Correct, yeah. No, not day to day. Maybe I'm there once a year when we meet like for company events, or we are on another event or expos. It's also interesting to me that you mentioned this, because although I'm working remotely, still there is like this connection with the team members, which I think is really valuable. And I'm a big promoter of working from home. Of course, there's disadvantages as well, but also big advantages. I'm not wasting time on commute. So basically, I have 2 hours more in the day, roughly. If we say 1 hour to the office, 1 hour back, so we save 2 hours on commute. You save gas. You save whatever it might be, like wear of your vehicle. Um, so yeah, it has definitely a ton of advantages. But it's all about balance, right? You have to really make sure that if you work from home, the job is not becoming your hobby, so to speak. So you can literally work 24 hours if you could. So you have to make sure there's a cut and you have some balance in life. Mhm. Yeah, I think that makes sense. There's even this quote from Naval, I think, which is like, if you find something that feels like play to you, which is work to others, you've actually won. Which I think is a really powerful quote. And for example, if you feel like something feels like work, you have to actually gamify it. So how, for example, I'm studying for an exam, for example, and how can I make this fun? So, for example, there's studies even showing like when you smile while studying, it increases your willingness to actually learn the topic, or just make it fun, whether it's meeting up with friends or in any other way. So there's some ways to make it more fun. I don't feel sometimes definitely I feel like it's stressful to do some things, but I think the stress, if I'm really going into myself now, I feel sometimes the stress comes from ignoring the things that you should be doing. So if I know I have to record this video, I have to write a script for that video, but I'm ignoring it for 2-3 weeks, I'm feeling stressed. And it's not because of that thing I'm doing right now, like working on a blog post, because internally in the back of my head, it feels like, hey, by the way, Jousef, you need to write that script. And it keeps telling me this thing. So when I'm ignoring things, I become stressed. Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. We're good with time. If you have any more questions, shoot them out. Yeah, so there's two things. So Science Academy, there's once we have the cohort, right? The 5-week cohort for engineers. And on the other hand, we have the science courses. So science courses is something I do on the side. For example, there's actually something I do for the cohort, because when people sign up for the 5-week cohort, they're going to learn about computational fluid dynamics, finite element method, coding, AI, and career development in 5 weeks. And while they're doing that, while they're listening to talks from experts, I'm creating courses on the side so they can take the courses on demand. So if they decide to want to learn about MATLAB or Simulink, they can do that. And then the 5-week cohort itself, that actually came from a pain point that I kind of discovered. It's more like the idea of having an accountability buddy, being in a community, in a closed circle. Because if you're learning stuff on yourself, it can become quite daunting, like boring. So I was thinking about, okay, why not put people in groups and they work on homeworks, they're listening to talks, and it's all a closed circle, it's not public, so that it also feels exclusive to them. And then when they sign up, they have accountability buddies, they see others who learn, so they want to keep up with them. And it's a very close, tiny circle, basically. So they feel more inclined to actually learn the things. Because if I just tell you, hey, learn about FEM, you just open 15 tabs, learn about FEM, and then at some point you're just going to close it. You don't feel motivated enough. But if you have an accountability buddy, you kind of push yourself to the, or each other to the next level. Definitely, but the hard part is actually finding someone who's on your level, because if someone is way above you, you feel demotivated, because you know what they say, right? Comparison is the thief of joy. So if you just compare yourself to way better students, you're just going to do nothing because you feel paralyzed. Oh, he's smarter than me, he has better grades than me, he'll have way more job opportunities. So if you find someone in uni or school who is at the same level as you and you kind of have the same vibe, that's actually, then you definitely need that person to be your accountability buddy. But also make sure none of you become lazy, or if someone becomes lazy, you're pushing the other one to kind of get up again. Yeah, correct. No, all by myself. Also, the YouTube channel, I'm doing it all by myself. I have a virtual assistant. She's helping me a little bit, like 10, 15 hours a week, but it's more on the admin side of things, checking emails, uploading content, fixing content. Um, that's something I would recommend someone to do if they achieve the maybe like a few subscribers who generate some passive income, where you could pay a virtual assistant. I don't call myself a founder. Maybe it's something, or entrepreneur. It sounds a bit cringy. So maybe there's this term called solopreneur, where you're basically just on yourself without any external funding. or anything like that, you create stuff for yourself. And I have way more plans, by the way. So I want to delve more deep into YouTube, educate way more people, and kind of that's also a difficult thing to actually understand YouTube and how YouTube works, the algorithm works, the ominous algorithm, however that might work. It's interesting because the more I consume myself, the more I understand how YouTube works and how I can educate people. So, but that's very, very difficult because you actually have to create a ton of content to kind of create a mental concept to know what you have to do in order to be successful. It definitely, but YouTube is the main thing that I'm looking at. So yeah, it's something I'm familiar with. I'm also started to upload videos on TikTok, but I feel like some went very viral and it's like very fluctuating. So some are not going very viral, or others are going viral. It's a bit weird. TikTok, I think also they changed the algorithm, and I want to drive people more towards making quick content with which kind of enforces people to have a low attention span. So you're not conveying the message in 10 seconds, you're out. And it's a bit weird. I don't know, it's a bit of a dilemma, to be honest, because I want to create content and you want to become bigger, but at the same time, you don't want to feed the beast of like showing kids content and lowering their attention span. It's a bit of a weird thing for me, to be honest. Yeah, definitely. Sometimes I go back to my own videos and check, hey, what was this derivation again? just to see what I created. Or definitely. So if I create a coding video and I want to check something, then I just go back to my own videos or check another video. But mostly it's also for other people because you have to generate or create value for people in order to be successful. It's just an exchange at the end of the day. You create value and they give you, in an ideal case, money for a course, for example. Yeah, you have to differentiate a bit. So there's on one hand the political aspect, so how Germany moves politically, but something we shouldn't go into. Then we have definitely bureaucracy is horrible. Like honestly, like I haven't seen one place in Germany where bureaucracy is like quick and efficient. Where the Netherlands is way faster. There, a lot of things are digitalized. You have an app for almost everything, and when you need a letter or like a document, you receive it in 2 days. In Germany, we're at like 3 or 4 months. You're like, okay, whatever, man. Um, I think in terms of startups that you mentioned, I was fortunate enough to meet a multi-millionaire, and he actually moved to Dubai, and he said like it's possible to create startups in Germany, and there are very good environments to actually who promote this kind of startup-y um, yeah, endeavors. But in general, it's very, very hard because there's a lot of bureaucracy involved, a lot of rules, regulations. So kind of they're putting stepping stones in your way. It feels a bit weird. And then when you come to the Netherlands, they have all these nice regulations for companies, and the taxes are a bit better for people who come from another country. So it's a bit weird. They attract talent. I think they are very smart in the Netherlands, so they want to attract talent, and that's why they tell people to come here. We have enough money. We don't have so many regulations. Of course, there's law. There's a lot of laws that you have to comply with, but I feel that things are easier here in the Netherlands for sure. Other than bragging to family members at events, hey, by the way, I'm an engineer. I think in the beginning was a bit daunting, to be honest. In my bachelor's, I was like, oh, really? Like 6 or 8 semesters, or even 10 semesters, which is eight, I think, is the average. So it was a bit daunting at first, but I think the big thing that I loved is that it's so broad. You can literally do a ton of things. You can go into the direction of aerodynamics, structural design, whatever it might be. You can basically pick then your own path when you're once in your masters. So I think that was super, super interesting. And I feel if you're an engineer, you can do a lot of things. So that's definitely something I really, really enjoyed. So I had the other opportunities of either becoming a teacher or a mathematician or like physicist. And I was like, engineering is like very broad. You can do a ton of things. So you can basically decide what you want to do at the end of the day. So yeah, I don't have any particular reason other than prestige and the wrong perception of receiving millions after you graduate. Hmm. Hmm. Mm. Yeah, I can totally. There's so much stuff to learn. I think one advantage of actually doing YouTube videos is you become a better communicator, because if you're not a good communicator, you're not going to be successful. So actually, wanting to become successful on YouTube requires you to be a good salesperson, speaker, communicator. But yeah, I also still have a ton to learn. It's not my first language, so actually I was born in Germany, so German is my first language, and then English I could definitely do improve there, to be honest. But it's with everything in life. I could be a better engineer, better communicator, better salesperson for sure. So, but a day only has 24 hours, so you really have to see where you put your energy into. But public speaking is definitely something I need to improve on as well. So, yeah, but I think that makes life beautiful, because if you would be an expert immediately in something, that takes away the effort, the joy that you take from actually being successful then at the end, if you get what I mean. So, yeah, there's a duality in life, like ups and downs. So, mm. The language you mean? Dutch, Dutch. Exactly. Yeah, I'm learning a few sentences, so I learned it from my partner. But in general, you can go a long way if you only speak English, which is super interesting, by the way. If you go to Germany, I have to rant against her, but it's just the truth. If you go to Germany to a supermarket, for example, and you don't speak any German, and you ask them for something in English, they'd be like, "Nope, speak German or you're out." It's like what? And if you go here to the Netherlands, literally everyone speaks English. It's crazy. Like it doesn't even matter what they work for, like where they work in. You just go to them. I think the education level here is extremely high. Now that's also one of the reasons I moved. So because if I have children and they can study here, I think that's better than in some other countries. I don't know. I don't like to generalize, but I think on average they would love to see you speak their language. It's like, why don't you speak German? But I think the French community is a bit more drastic when it comes to this. So if either you speak French or no, nope, you're out. That's at least my experience. Probably, yeah. If you look at the average, it's probably like that. But in the Netherlands, I haven't seen any problems with speaking English, to be honest, which I think is fascinating. But yeah, but definitely education level here is high. I think they're even forced to take English in school, and you even have the option to learn German as well. So either you grow up bilingual, or like you can take a third or fourth language. So that's really impressive. Correct. That's true, but I feel kind of the education system is a bit weird. I don't know why that is though, because everyone you talk to, if you come to the Netherlands, you talk in English. Like I was super impressed. I come there and like, oh, maybe she doesn't speak English, and then you start speaking English. She's like super fluent, speaking way better English than you, and like, okay, no, no, no. I actually finished university. I studied in Germany, finished, and then I actually moved 7, 8 months ago to the Netherlands. Yeah, while I was working already full time for Monolith. So yeah, was not motivated by any academic efforts or anything like that. We have a big university in Eindhoven, TU Eindhoven. It's very famous out of in the engineering space, but no, that was not the motivation. Of course, I have now the advantage of going there and interviewing people live, which I'll hopefully do soon. But yeah, I feel also the environment is a little bit better because I used to live in a village in Germany. It's like very close. You know what they say, right? You're basically the average of 5 people that surround you. But if you're living in a village, it's kind of like it's a bit weird. So if you live in a big city where you have access to good education, nice people, and definitely raises your living standards. No, it was not planned actually. It just happened that I met my partner, and then we just decided to move here to the Netherlands. Yeah. No, no, actually, it was in the village, and I always commuted for uni. So I think 40-ish minutes one way. So back and forth was almost 2 hours. So that was basically my life as a student. I have to record a YouTube video in 15 minutes. No, just kidding. I'm like pretending to be a good YouTuber. Yeah, the nice thing in your case was you kept reaching out, and you were quite easygoing. You sent me a nice message, and I have a ton of requests like that. For example, if people write me, "Yeah, our CEO wants to be on your podcast," I was like, "Okay, first of all, that's a commercial request, so I'm taking money from you." The way, because I'm saying this is okay. If they do it for money, it's a win-win. If they don't do it for money, I'm not promoting you for free. That's just how I am. If people listening to this thinking, oh, well, he's only chasing money. Well, if you're a company and you can't afford to invest some money into marketing to come on my podcast, which I, by the way, built over 2-3 years, my audience, and people don't seem to realize that, of course I'm taking money. But if you, for example, ask me for a podcast and you're an upcoming podcast superstar, of course I'm going to go to your podcast. And it's basically a win-win for both of us. So I'm helping you, and you're helping me to do this, or giving me this opportunity. But for companies, I'm like, nope, either you pay me or you're out. Definitely. Definitely. If I know someone has a business, I'm very, very skeptical first. I haven't had the case before. So if I have companies on my podcast, they're paying a small fee. But that fee, by the way, I'm not buying myself a Porsche or anything like that. I'm actually putting that back into equipment. For example, I'm buying a new microphone, I buy new equipment to actually increase the production value, because then you can show people that you actually put effort into what you're creating. But if there's an individual saying, hey, I want to be on your podcast talking about the latest state of the art machine learning model, but you actually see that this guy has a company, it's a bit smelly then. You're just saying, okay, is it commercial interest, or you just dig a bit deeper, and then at some point they sometimes don't even answer anymore because they know I keep asking questions. They're like, oh, fuck, I can't promote my company. Mhm. Oh, that's such a good question. Really love that question. Really good. I actually read books on the side, but also doing things and then actually improving incrementally, like in small steps. For example, if I do a podcast, if you go back to my episode 1 podcast, there's such a crap quality, but then over time you learn how to become a better editor. And how do I become a better editor? By looking at other podcasts and seeing how they do it. So if I particularly like, for example, this, you only see two big faces and like there's no distraction for the viewer. This is something, okay, this is nice. I should actually do this because I like it. So what's very interesting to that, it also brings me to another point, which I'm mentioning in a second, is rather than being a consumer, you become an observer, especially when you create content yourself. So you as a podcaster, um, you watch videos or movies in a different way. Okay, this is interesting. This is a nice camera angle. I could do this. I could do that. You know what I mean? It's like kind of you're shifting your like perception a little bit from becoming more of a consumer, which I think, by the way, is horrible. If you're only a consumer, um, you're not producing anything. You're not have no value to society. Sounds a bit harsh, but you know what I mean. Like you're not producing actually content and giving back to the community. That's what I mean. Um, rather than, but then also the same methodology applies to if you buy something. So if you go to Starbucks and you buy a coffee for €8, £8, whatever it might be, you have to think in a not a consumer way, but actually in a producer way. Okay, £8. Why are they able to charge me £8? What made me buy that thing? So actually, I'm currently also going through that mind shift of like, okay, I bought this T-shirt now for €50, let's say. Why did I buy that shirt in the first place? Was there any marketing incentive behind it? Why did they convince me to buy that thing? That's so interesting psychologically, because then if you think that way, you can actually adapt your videos, change your sales tactic a bit if you sell courses, make them more attractive for people, but also obviously at the end of the day you have to create value. So of course, if I'm buying a Starbucks coffee, it has some kind of value, and maybe it's just virtue signaling, just hey, look at me, I have a Starbucks coffee for you. It's so interesting. Exactly. Mm. And that's so interesting. And I think Apple has perfectionized this, because if you buy a pair of headphones or like you buy a Mac, you just actually don't think about it anymore. Do I really need this? You're like, 4 or 5K for a laptop, probably worth it, because you have this very well functioning ecosystem and everything works very well, and you don't like Windows anymore, you hate Windows. So this is actually just your justification for yourself why you actually buy that thing. But you're not only buying that thing, that piece of hardware, you're actually buying value and actually buying productivity. That's the way how I think it. For example, if I have the M1 MacBook, I have it specced out, cost me like 4.5K. But the way I'm thinking about that, if I make 10% back of that notebook every year, that's actually a good investment. That's the way how I think it. And when I create a couple of podcasts, I can render things super quickly. Then actually for me, this is a no-brainer. But if you buy coffee, you have to think, well, I have coffee at home. Do I really need a Starbucks coffee now? It's kind of this psychological thing that you have to think about. And the more you think about it, I think, yeah, it's interesting. It's really, really interesting psychology. There's That's true. You know what Apple does? If you compare Samsung, for example, or any other mobile phone manufacturer or company, what Apple does always in the advertisement, if you look at it very closely, is they show you what you can achieve with it. For example, if you see Apple advertisement, they show you the result. This is the result you can achieve. Awesome images, great videos. They don't say, we have so many megapixels, we have this chip in it. They do it when they pitch the product, like when there's the keynote. But actually, if you see advertisement that don't say these things specifically, this is super interesting from a marketing perspective. They show you the outcome and not actually the features. Yeah, definitely. Exactly. That brings me to another point, just because I thought of Uber. Uber does the same thing. What's the difference between Uber and a taxi? It's basically the same thing, but you know what people want? People want certainty. And that's actually when they have an app and they know how far the taxi or the Uber driver is away, that gives them certainty. The same way someone buys a coffee from Starbucks, because if I spend £8, I know it's going to be that taste, it's going to be a ton of sugar in it, I'm going to enjoy it. That's where I'm buying into certainty, and that way I'm preferring Uber over a taxi or Starbucks over like a non-branded coffee. So people love certainty. That's so interesting. Okay, two answers to that. First of all, don't overdo it. So don't plan every second of your life, because these productivity gurus on YouTube, I'm not gonna name anyone right now, they're like, okay, I have 57 apps, by the way, and now if you have this information or this tweet, put it in the first app, and then after 15 hours, you have it in the last app, everything planned. It doesn't make any sense. Like if you time block and say, for example, on Saturday, I'm gonna edit a podcast for 2 hours, and then I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to chill a bit, and then at the evening I may be answering emails or create a newsletter. That's completely fine, because you don't want to have your life planned out like a madman. It doesn't make any sense at all. So I think time blocking is the best way, and I'm currently working actually on or reading a book, which is this one, if you can see it, Building a Second Brain from Tiago Forte. I can really recommend it. So actually how you actually collect information and how you capture it. And I'm also using Notion. If people know that, that's an app called Notion, where you can actually plan your life, build a second brain, as the book also is called. So that's enough. So if you have Notion and kind of a time blocking method, that's completely enough. And if you're studying, use something like spaced repetition. So actually at spaced repetitions, repeat what you've learned, check your knowledge on it, and that's all you need. You don't need a fancy app. You don't need a $5,000 course. So yeah, stick to the principles. That's actually the problem of nowadays society. They want to have the pill that helps them go from 0 to hero in like 1 hour, and they would be willing to pay $5,000 for it. But then once they buy the $5,000 course, they're like, that seems too easy. No, there must be some secret sauce behind this. That's so weird. $100%. The max. I know what you mean. That's basically the next love, quote unquote, is only one swipe away, and that's actually horrible. You don't have to. It's so weird. Like men used to go out, like we men, yeah, used to go out and actually talk to women. There has to be an active effort that you put into a relationship. By the way, can I have your number? Can we go on a date? Things like that. But now it's just like one swipe away. Hey, you want to go on a date? Yeah, okay. And then once you dated like 2 or 3 times the person, it's like, well, it's not as it seemed like on the app that I was using. So I'm just keep swiping. So basically, the concept of love gets kind of dissolves a little bit. So it's so weird. I don't know. So actually, I would recommend to anyone to put in some effort to actually meet people in real life, because at the end of the day, these companies only want to make money. So does Tinder really want you to find love? Of course not. They're going to lose a customer if they. So why would they be interested in that? Same as pharmaceutical companies. Are they really interested? Of course. Now people say, okay, now here comes the conspiracy theorist. Of course they want to make money with you. Why would a pharmaceutical company be interested in you being healthy? It doesn't make any sense. Of course, pharma has done an amazing job in medicine of actually providing useful medications over the last 150 years and whatnot. But of course they want to make money. If you're healthy, how are you a paying customer? That brings us back to, what food do you eat? What things are you drinking? What environment are you living in? So if people believe that the government or the pharmaceutical industries want to keep us healthy, I think they need to wake up a little bit and get off TikTok. Yes, actually, it's a controversy, but I said it 2.5 years ago and 3 years ago when the pandemic started. I still say it nowadays. Yes, medicine has done an amazing job of helping us. If I have an injury and I go to the doctor giving me painkillers, helping me, I really love that. That's amazing progress. But at the same time, the craziest business model that exists, in my opinion, is if you make people sick on average, you don't kill them, you make them sick on average, and they rely on medication for a long period of time. You don't want them die, you don't want them dead, but you keep them on medication for a long period of time. That's how they pay. That's a sick business model, but it works. Exactly. That was a good one. Feels like a conspiracy podcast now. We're shifting from engineering to conspiracy. Want to talk about World Trade Center 7 now? No? Okay. To keep it very short, I would probably say follow your passion, but that's horrible advice. Because if you follow your passion, at the end of the day, you might end up somewhere which doesn't fulfill you at all. And also, when you fulfill your passion, only do the things you want to do. You're not going to get far because you have to sometimes do things that are not very pleasant. Probably advice is just stay curious. Is probably one advice I would give, because curiosity feeds your intellect. It keeps you awake, forces you to look right and left and not believe everything you see, whether that's the news or TikTok or on Instagram. Because at the end of I feel it's gotten a bit worse. Maybe I've selectively only perceive what has gotten worse, not what has become better. But just put your phone away sometime. Take some time off, go into nature, try to think. Because I think what's also very interesting, when people ask you, for example, what books are you reading? They're not asking what books you read. They want to know why you think the way you think. Where did you learn how to think? And I feel nowadays people don't think clear enough. And I include myself then as well, because you have all these options, as you mentioned. Everything is bombarding you. You go on LinkedIn, there's this latest research going on. Oh, there's a YouTube video. Oh man, I have to create a script. I have this podcast going on. There's so much stuff going on in your brain that you can't think clearly. And I think number one goal of everyone should be, especially engineers, find a way to think clearly, set time off from your machine, phone, and maybe do a social media detox. 7 days, no phone, productive work, take 2-3 books, read them, take a highlighter and be productive, rather than, because productivity is also like sometimes a misnomer, because people think they're productive. Oh, I worked 12 hours today or 14 hours today. Yeah, but actually, how productive were you? No, but I've worked 14 hours. No, but what did you actually achieve in 14 hours? You probably worked 2 hours, but you say you worked 14. And by the way, I'm the same way. I was guilty like that as a student. I was like studying until 3 a.m. in the morning, and I told everyone, hey, I was up until 3 a.m. and everyone was like, poor man, you're a real engineer. But actually, I was doing nothing. You were browsing Wikipedia articles, reading something, and like, it's not productive at all. So just don't fool yourself, and to actually be fully productive, be curious, be open-minded, and try to focus. Time blocking. I don't have a productive definition of productivity. Probably it's like when you, how can I say it? I have to come up with something now, otherwise I look stupid. Give me a second. Probably when you're fully immersed into something for, let's say, for beginners, let's say fully immersed into something for 2-3 hours without looking on your phone, then you know that you're actually productive. Because sometimes I also feel like when I'm editing a podcast, okay, there's an email, so I'm checking my phone. so I'm not productive. That's not productivity. So make sure you're fully immersed. Yeah. So at least my definition of productivity. If you want to find another definition, go on YouTube and check how you can use 50 apps on being more productive. And actually installing the apps makes you less productive than you actually want to become. So it doesn't make any sense. No. You know what they say, right? That's this saying which I really like, is the best shortcut is actually not looking for a shortcut. I like that really much, because it actually forces you to actually do the hard work. You just do the thing for a consistent amount of time, and then eventually you'll become successful with the compounding effect. You're not just trying to, it's in the fitness industry, it's on YouTube. Everyone tries to clickbait or find this special pill to become a monster overnight. It's so weird. I don't know why that is. It's psychology of humans, I think. You definitely have to work. You definitely have to work hard. But if you're smart as well, that definitely helps. Gives you additional leverage. But definitely hard work is really essential. But if you don't have to work that hard, according to Pareto principle, like 80-20 rule, you work smart and get good enough outcome to be productive or like successful. That's completely enough. Um, that's There's also something that shifted, and it's interesting that you talk about it because there's actually three things, and I stole that from another podcast. Three things that make people actually unsuccessful is whether they're lazy, stupid, or arrogant. So if they're lazy, usually people say, "Yeah, I work 14 hours." I talked about that. No, you don't. You basically have 2 hours productive. That's it. We have the laziness aspect, then we have the arrogance aspect. A lot of people are very arrogant. So if I'm listening to you, you're younger than me, I assume, and you have a tip for me, a productivity tip. You talk about time blocking, and I never heard of that before. I'm not like, I'm productive enough, I'm older, I'm smarter, I have a degree. That's arrogance. And a lot of people are like that, especially on Twitter. They're like, no, I have a degree, I'm all good, I'm super successful. So arrogance is, and Twitter, horrible. Twitter, horrible. Yeah, very specific. It's a lot of arrogance. Um, yeah, and then we had laziness, arrogance, and what else? Stupidity. A lot of people are actually not stupid. They're just very lazy or arrogant. So stupidity, probably both of us, we are both not stupid. We just have to make the thing that's actually giving us the most success, which is like focusing on a thing and doing it on a consistent basis, and then you eventually become successful. And I do have to do that myself, by the way. For example, I have to basically expose myself here. So when you go to my YouTube channel, you will find there's a lot of podcasts. I haven't done any engineering videos in a while. Well, I've uploaded a fun video which is called "Engineers Be Like," or "Engineers Don't Say," things engineers don't say. But the thing is, actually, I should actually create engineering content because that's actually the path with most friction and actually provides value to my engineering audience. So why am I not doing that? Well, I could edit the podcast. I'm a good editor now. I edit the podcast in 1 hour, and then I can just upload it. I have content. But actually, the thing I should do is create high value courses and create engineering content on a consistent basis because I've become good at the thing of editing. So for me, it's just, I'll do it 1 hour. So it's very easy. So I'm kind of exposing myself here. That way, I have to make sure I do the hard stuff and get that into making engineering content. Definitely. What do you mean? Can you repeat the question? Ah, start start coding early. I started coding quite late. I think that's definitely something because that brings us back to the topic of leverage. Coding is actually one of the best leveraging techniques because if you think about it, with code you can literally have a whole company on a USB stick. It's all ones and zeros, and it could be worth multi-million dollars by having only code. But if you're like a normal worker, you work, for example, at a construction site, the time you put in equals the money you get out at the end of the month. And you work 8 hours, you get that specific amount of money. If you work 24 hours, which is impossible, by the way, you would theoretically get 3 times the amount of money. But with code, you have maximum leverage. That means if you code early and you have like a nice idea and can prototype an idea into code, and that could be worth potentially millions. And we see that with YouTube. YouTube is literally code, and it helps me if you upload the podcast. What is that at the end? Zeros and ones. So basically, you make money in your steep from YouTube AdSense by leveraging code. Yeah, There's probably a market for that. I'm 100% sure. 100%. I think probably next milestone is 100K subscribers. That would be nice if I can achieve that in 1 to 1.5 years. That would be really, really great. So I'm kind of working on a plan right now on what videos to create, who to interview, yeah, and then giving back to the community. I think so. Giving away videos for free, as we said in the beginning, but also creating more courses, more to educate more people around the world. But not only engineers, but also kids, maybe. Let me think. Becoming the best version of yourself, giving as much as you can to the community, to people, and make sure to inspire them. That's my short answer. Definitely, because if you look back, for example, when I was a teenager, I had a ton of problems with police. So I was in a lot of trouble. I would have never thought, even my tutors, that would, if you tell them that I'm an engineer today and a YouTuber, and they would be like, no. So I had a lot of trouble when I was a kid. So I think looking back now, I think I could be very proud, but not satisfied, obviously. You know what they say, proud but never satisfied, of what I've made of myself. And I would like to be that person for someone who might be watching my videos. So someone who might be feeling down, who is maybe lost in life, and maybe with my fun videos, I can cheer them up a bit, but also educate people around the world. That's my main goal, because I get a lot of good questions or like nice messages via Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn, and they say, by the way, your podcast inspired me to pursue the engineering path, and that's really what fulfills me. Really good questions. Really good questions. Really enjoyed the podcast. That being your second episode, I wish I would be so good when I did my second episode back then when I started my podcast. But yeah, really nice questions, to be honest. You look good to me, but you know it is what it is. Over with practice comes. If you practice enough podcast, you'll see that your quality becomes better. Your background looks more professional at some point. But yeah, as long as you provide value, people don't really care that much about video. They care more about audio. So make sure to upload that podcast to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and other platforms. Are you doing that, by the way? Like, are you distributing your podcast? You can do it. I haven't seen. Well, I have some views definitely. Maybe use Anchor. Anchor.fm is the name, and once you upload it there, you can actually they distribute it for you. I think Spotify bought them a couple of years ago. I'm not sure. Yeah, absolutely no problem. It was longer than intended, but I really enjoyed the session and good questions, and I'm quite sure you'll become a very good podcaster. No problem. Take care.